Ladies and gentlemen, we made it. Round 11 of the FIDE Grand Swiss. Just going to start off. This has been incredible. Absolutely incredible. Incredible tournament. Going into the final round, we have 5 players tied for the lead. Now, while that is technically true, it's not really. Because of the tiebreaks. So there's kind of like a ranking. So, with that said, we're going to start off with the first game, as I pause the slideshow and show you the board. And we're going to go to Anish Giri versus Hans Niemann. I'm going to show you the top 3 boards. It includes all the 5 players who were leading. Matthias Bluebaum is kind of top. Then it's Anish Giri. And then I think it's Vincent Keymer. And then Alireza Firouzja. And then Arjun Erigaisi. I think they're in about that order-ish. Anish Giri, Hans Niemann. We have c4 from Anish. An English opening, knight to f6, knight to c3, e5. Basically, it's winner take all in the final round. Knight to c6, e3, bishop to b4, queen c2. This is like a mainline English kind of opening. Bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, and now queen to e7, a3, d5, d4, ed4, knight d4. You don't want to, obviously can't take here because it's pinned. So knight takes d4 and the queen has to move again. And Anish has spent lots of time because he's played queen c2, queen here, queen here. In 10 moves, he's made 3 of them with the queen, so 30% of his moves have come with the queen. And he's traded off both of his active knights. And his bishops are both at home. Black has made 1 move with the queen and has an active knight, and it's about to be their move. And they play c5. Hits the queen, makes the move again, queen to h4, and now bishop to e6. I think Hans Niemann has done a fantastic job. But Anish Giri is still in prep, and Hans Niemann has had to think. C takes d5, knight takes d5, and now bishop b5 check, forcing bishop to d7, and now Hans Niemann cannot castle. Or can he? Here, what I would play, I'm not Anish Giri, but I would just take here and get the king into the center. But this is level. So Anish obviously has this different idea with bishop to e2, allowing rook c8, but now f3. f6, king f2, king f7. No castling for anybody. The kings are going to be housed on f2 and f7 because we're basically in an endgame. And the kings are now closer to the center of the board on f2 than on g1. So that's why that was done. Rook d1, bishop to e6, h4, taking up some space and trying to limit Hans Niemann's pawn mobility on the king side. This bishop is still a problem. You are going to have to invest some time to move it so that you can connect your rooks. What might happen for Anish? He's slightly better because of these 2 bishops. The board is going to open up and his bishops are going to be favored. This knight really struggles for good squares, and it's going to really... Hans Niemann's biggest challenge is how to make that knight effective or to trade off that knight for one of the bishops. But importantly, which bishop? If he wants winning chances, he wants to trade the dark squared bishop and leave himself a same color bishop endgame. If he wants a draw, he trades it for the light squared bishop to leave us opposite colored bishops. So it depends on how energetically he can play, but probably Hans is playing for a draw and Anish is the one that's pressing. Bishop to a3, knight to a5, rook d6, rook h e8, and g4. Knight b7, look at that, the fianchetto knight, but simply rook d2. Knight a5, rook d6, and it looked like a repetition, but not. Here, we got rook dd1, knight a5, and now rook ac1. Anish Giri is pressing for a win, and he's better against Hans Niemann. And king e7 is not helping Hans' cause. It's now plus 1.5 as Anish plays bishop to a6, which is a tempo on the rook. The rook must move, and now we trade off a set of rooks, and we play b4. And that knight has got some tough choices to make. It goes to b3, rook c3. Where is that knight going? Rook d6. It's still protected, but it's no good now. B takes c5, pawn takes c5, a mistake. The best move in this position was to rescue your knight with a tempo on the bishop. B takes c5 looks smart because you hit this. And if you take here, knight takes here. and then you win the piece. But I don't have to do either of those. There are 3 moves here that win. Bishop to e2, namely, you can just retreat. Sorry, let me not click the wrong squares. Bishop to b5, just retreating the bishop 1 square, and rook takes b3. And you might say, wait, how does rook takes b3 work? Because rook takes a6. Rook c7 check. And if bishop d7, then you've got rook takes a7. And this endgame would have been... Actually, it's winning for Hans Niemann. I don't know why rook takes b3. I must have mixed something up. Anyway. Oh, it's rook takes b3. Damn it, not rook takes c5. Rook takes b3. We take the knight, and we give up the rook. But we get the rook back. And we get into same color bishop endgame. But this is completely winning for Anish Giri. A mistake from Hans Niemann, a tactical skirmish, completely winning for Anish Giri. But it is difficult to win. And he's only got 7 minutes on the clock. g5 now. What you want to do is you want to put all of your pawns on dark squares. And you want to protect your bishop. It's same kind of bishop endgames. They are so hard to play. Because it's, do I put my pawns on light squares or not? And Anish Giri just wins. And guarantees himself, with this win, a spot in the candidates. And in fact, I can tell you now, Anish Giri wins the FIDE Grand Swiss. But that is not the end of the story. We must go to Vincent Keymer versus Arjun Erigaisi. A win for either of these players all but guarantees them second place behind Anish Giri. d4, knight f6, c4, e6, and we get a Queen's Indian from Vincent Keymer as he looks to press for a win. And he gets a double fianchetto. Look at this. You could not be more provocative. You are here for a fight. Vincent Keymer knows what he must do. He must win. And we play effectively a King's Indian. And, you know, there's jostling as we maneuver the pieces. Normally white attacks on the queen side, but you can see black has expanded here. There's no, like, f4, f5. There's no big king side attack coming. So we're relying on this, and we're relying on the fact you can't push this without this becoming weak. So knight to a4. Look at that. That knight's dead now. Dead to the world unless it becomes a fianchetto knight back on b2. But it's going to be in this firing line. a5 secures everything. Bishop to d3. And now look at that. Knight to e4. Looks like the sacrifice of a knight, but your rook's hanging. So we've got to calculate correctly. And we go for this. This exchange where Arjun Erigaisi has given up his rook for a piece. He's down the exchange, but he gets knight to g5. And rook e8 and bishop here. And basically saying, look, you gave up your dark squared bishop, and you have huge dark squared weaknesses. That's a light square. So I'm going to at least find a draw. Queen e7, f3, rook a6, queen f4, bishop to c8. And now h4, Vincent Keymer might just be slightly better. Knight e5, bishop takes e5, d takes e5. You cannot really trade queens probably in this position. Oh, hang on. Yeah, you can't trade queens because you hang mate. Sorry. Brain fart at the moment. Yeah, so knight e5, bishop takes e5, d takes e5 to not get mated, queen e3, and now f5. Game's level. Game is level, despite the fact that Arjun's down pawns because the black king is so weak. Knight to c5, the knight has been resurrected. Queen a7, causing a huge pin. Look at this. Pin here, onto this. Unbelievable. Rook e1 defends the queen, so now the knight can move. And rook d6. f4, looking to break everything apart. e4. Black now has a passed pawn. White has a passed pawn. And black is slightly better. Vincent Keymer is pushing for a win. Vincent Keymer may just qualify for the candidates. Knight to f3, very clever tactic, but it doesn't work. And Vincent Keymer is now completely winning if he finds one move. It's a hard move to find. He has to play the unbelievable bishop to e6. You might say, wait, that makes no sense. I just take. Yes, you do. But I have queen takes e3. Rook takes e3. And now e takes f3. And then let's say... and then here, something like rook e5, h5, or you can play like rook takes f3. And this endgame would have been completely winning for Vincent Keymer. It's -3 if he plays a5. And he would have. So, does he find this incredible bishop sacrifice? No. He goes the wrong way. Bishop to a6. Now we jump knight into e5. Rook moves out the way, but knight a4. We trade the queens, and we drop the bishop back. But now h5 comes. It is still better for Vincent Keymer. g5. F takes g5. Rook c7, as he now begins the assault. g4 is a step in the wrong direction, but he's missed his chance. Rook e7, will he get another good chance? Knight d3 is very clever. You cannot take because you lose your rook. But now rook g7, the knight's now hanging, so it has to move, and we lose this pawn. And maybe, just maybe, he is still going to yet get another chance to book his spot for the FIDE candidates. Vincent Keymer, king f1, bishop takes d5 is rushed. cd5, rook d5, it is still better. You've got rook versus two knights, but as I said again, the only hope for this knight is to become a fianchetto knight. I suppose it can go in there now and reroute this way. King e2 is played to not allow the rook infiltration. King f8, and he's going to have to get it done in a very complicated endgame. Knight d6 played, but he's missed his chance. He loses that pawn. We get this one. And look at this. You've got these two clean passes. You've got this 2-on-1, and you've got two rooks. Knight takes g4. You lose the one pawn. Rook f5. Rook h3. Rook e6. King defense. Rook f4 was played on move 49, and the two players agreed to a draw. And with that, their chances of qualifying for the FIDE candidates are gone. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we must turn ourselves here. Alireza Firouzja, Matthias Bluebaum. d4, f5. A Dutch defense from Alireza Firouzja, after the Dutchman, Anish Giri, has already won. c4, knight f6, and we get a Dutch defense, and you don't see it a lot, so I'm going to talk about it a bit, because I used to play the Dutch. It's a really cool opening. We get like a Leningrad Dutch, but this game, it's not meaningless. If Firouzja wins, he's going to give himself a chance of qualifying for the candidates, but it's more that Bluebaum would lose, is more than Firouzja winning, and it would open up chances for somebody else from the pack, but there's nothing here. They do clarify the center very quickly, but they trade off the pieces to quite a significant extent. We get to this position, which is so interesting to evaluate. So the black king is weak, but that's because you've played the Dutch defense. Your f-file is weak. This diagonal is forever weak. And black has these two weaknesses. So Matthias Bluebaum can win and then without doubt qualify for the candidates. But there is counterplay for black everywhere. Is the big problem that you're facing. They have weaknesses, but they've got more dynamic play as opposed to the static weaknesses. And look at that. Knight takes g2. Because we've got Alekhine's gun here. When you take, your knight is going down as well. And you've got no choice. Queen takes b6. Queen takes b6. Now, we trade off the queens and we get the knight out. And this position is equal. But it's not really. You've lost this pawn, so it's now 2-2. This pawn is not going that way, going this way, and that's going that way. Who's equipped to really fight it out? Well, knight to d4 hits the rook. Rook has to move. f3. One of these players must win or must lose, or everything is decided on tiebreaks, which I think is a terrible end to the tournament. But we trade off the knights, and this endgame is probably a draw. And I'm sad to say, ladies and gentlemen, there are no final plot twists, as we trade off a rook and allow a queen to get here to this endgame, which is most certainly a draw. And the players play it because there is no point not to play it. You got to be careful as black not to get mated, but there's plenty of escape. And if Firouzja, who traded into this, a king and pawn endgame, up a pawn, could win, he had the best chance here, but it's a draw because of f4. G takes f4, king takes, G takes f4, and they shake hands because here, and this is a drawn king and pawn endgame because the white king just hides here in the corner, and you cannot promote the pawn. Matthias Bluebaum draws, but let us put the slideshow back on. Let us collapse the board because, ladies and gentlemen, Anish Giri wins the FIDE Grand Swiss, and in second place is none other than Matthias Bluebaum of Germany. There was a German. It was not Vincent Keymer. It was Matthias Bluebaum, who I don't think anybody called this unless their name was Matthias Bluebaum. The final standings after round 11. Oh boy. On 8 points, Anish Giri. Tied for second place was Matthias Bluebaum, Alireza Firouzja, and Vincent Keymer. All on 7.5. They are separated by the first tiebreak score. Tiebreak 1, and that is the average rating of the players that you played. Matthias Bluebaum played an average of 26.95, Alireza 26.84, and Vincent Keymer 26.68. I'm mad. I've saved my rant for the end. This is stupid. The 3 players, particularly in this tournament, were in qualification for the biggest chess tournament, before the one-on-one match for the World Championship, should not be done on tiebreaks. There should be a game that they should play against each other, play rapid chess, play 90-minute chess, play 60-minute chess, play 50-minute, play more chess. Have a day for tiebreaks to separate second place. Have them play 10 plus 5, have them play 5 plus 5, have them play Armageddons, I don't care. Have them play a 3-way tournament between the 3 of them. It is so unfair and heartbreaking for Alireza Firouzja and Vincent Keymer. Alireza Firouzja, if we look at his tournament, he finishes on 7.5, right? He had 1 defeat, and that was to Parham Maghsoodloo when Parham was on fire. He beat Basim Amin, Maxim Rodstein, Sam Shankland, Nurdirbek Yakuboyev, and Nihal Sarin. So he scores 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wins in the 11 rounds. Vincent Keymer, even better performance probably, you could argue. Because he had also just the 1 defeat, and that was to Marc-Andre Morizzi, who was in with a shout for like 2 rounds. He beats Jeffrey Zhang, Frederick Svane, Vidit Gujarati, Parham Maghsoodloo, draws with Matthias Bluebaum, and draws with Arjun Erigaisi. Unbelievable. Then in third place, there were quite a few players. It was from 5th until 18th, and it's a field that includes Amin Baidu Mishra, Arjun Erigaisi, Hans Niemann, Andy Woodward, who shot up towards the end, Nihal Sarin, Nurdirbek Abdusatorov, Awanda Liang, Ricard Rapport, Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, Nurdirbek Yakuboyev, Vidit Gujarati, who won the last event of this, Maxim Vachilagrav, Yu Yengi, Sam Sevian, and Andrei Esipenko. Parham Maghsoodloo fell off. He finishes with 6, and in 27th place, or tied for 5th place or whatever it is, if they're all on the same points. Parham Maghsoodloo, I will talk about the tournament overall. He had a terrible run after round 6. He scored 1 point out of 5. He went 1 out of 5. Unbelievable. Ladies and gentlemen, what did you think of the FIDE Grand Swiss? It was amazing. 11 rounds of action. We didn't know who was going to win until we got to the final day, and even then, it wasn't guaranteed. Vincent Keymer had chances. Had he won, he would be going to the FIDE candidates. It's heartbreaking. Matthias Bluebaum had a relatively quiet game against Alireza Firouzja in terms of there were no big swings of the engine. It was complicated. It was a Dutch defense. but it ends as it started. All is equal in love and war. I'm worried that there's skipped frames, so I hope it's not too much. But ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the FIDE Grand Swiss.